Good afternoon and welcome to the Pension Regulator's webinar on pensions dashboards. Today we will be talking about the progress made so far, what is to come next, and what schemes and those supporting them should be doing now. My name is Lucy Stone and I am joined by two excellent guests today. Chris Curry from the Pensions Dashboard Programme at the Money and Pensions Service. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, Lucy.
And Geraldine Bressett, who is an Administrator and Deputy Chair of the Pensions Administration Standards Association Working Group on Pensions Dashboards. Good afternoon, Geraldine.
Good afternoon, Lucy.
You can ask questions any time during the session by using the box to the right of the video player. You can also download a reference document and a useful link guide during or after the webinar, and a recording will be available in a few days if you want to watch this again. We would ask you to please complete a short survey you can access through the menu on the left, even if you leave early. This helps us make sure our webinars deliver what you need. Pensions dashboards are going to show members a complete picture of their pensions in one place, allowing them to better plan for retirement. Great progress has been made so far, but with just over 3 months to go to the connection deadline, 31st of October 2026, there is still work to do. So without further ado, let's get started. Chris, over 70 million pension records are now connected to the dashboard's ecosystem. That's 85% of all the pension records in scope. Can you tell us a bit more about the progress that's been made?
Absolutely, Lucy. So as you say, there has been significant progress on connection. Those numbers you talked about, over 70 million records connected, as well as tens of millions of state pension records connected as well. We now think over half of the schemes that need to be connected by that October 31st deadline have now connected. So we've made some real progress. And when you think that it was only last April 2025, that we actually started the connection process, you can see that we've done an awful lot of work in that relatively short space of time. But we've also moved the focus on away from connection as well. And what we've been doing in the last few months is doing a lot of testing with the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard. So now we have this, as the schemes connected and lots of those records, we're now actually able to allow people to test the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard with their own data, so they can see their own pensions coming through. And that gives us a much better idea of how well the dashboard is working and how useful the dashboard is going to be for people going forward. So we've been doing quite a lot of testing so far. We've already tested with a few hundred people, and we'll be testing with thousands more before the end of the year. And we're getting some really, really useful findings coming through as well. So there's been some real positives coming through. So people are generally very happy to be able to use the dashboard. Most people who are using it are able to get through from the starting point right the way to the end. Most people are finding at least one pension as they go through, which is always a bonus when they're looking for pensions as part of this work. And overall, kind of the satisfaction levels are pretty high for what we're seeing, for what is still quite an early service that we're putting together. As you'd expect, though, with testing, we aren't always finding all the positives. There are a few things to work on as well. We know that the people, when they have to verify their identity, sometimes because it's a relatively new service, that's taking them slightly longer than they expect if they're not prepared and don't have the right things with them. We know that sometimes people get a bit confused when they see some of the timelines with what they're looking at. And we also know that sometimes people are a bit surprised about how out of date or how old some of the information is they're looking at. So as you know, under the regulations, data that's being shown can be up to 13 months old. And for some people, they're not quite sure why they're looking at something which might be more or older than something they might have seen somewhere else in what they're looking at. So there's a few things that we need to work on still, but we will continue to do that. But alongside testing with users, I just want to mention one other thing that we've been doing as well, and that's industry testing. And that is really important because testing with members of the industry who know what should be being shown on the dashboard they're looking at is really important, because that allows us to identify if it's the right information that's coming through. So our scheme's sending through the right data to the right person at the right time. And it's really important that we can not only use the consumer testing to make sure that dashboards work for people, but also the industry testing to make sure that the right accurate information is coming through in a timely way. So then we can use all these insights to help inform when we're going to actually launch the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard.
And of course, schemes can also learn from the testing insights and what's coming through so they can get more prepared, absolutely. Speaking of user testing, you have both tested the Money Helper dashboards. Could you share a little bit about your experience? I'm going to go to Geraldine first.
Thank you. So Absolutely. So I've been very lucky. I've tested twice. So I did the first test in October 2025, and I tested again recently in June 2026. And I want to start by saying what amazing progress actually has been made since I did that testing in October 25, and the testing that I've done more recently. But there was a lot of learnings from that testing. And to Chris's point, I think there were things that I spotted because I'm working in industry that other people might not spot, other savers might not spot. So I thought I'd share some of those with you today.
Yeah.
That's okay. Importantly, I found my pensions, which was great. I found the pensions that I expected to see
That's a good
there.
start, yeah.
And I didn't have any false positives, which was also great. So I didn't find any pensions that I shouldn't have found. So that was excellent. When I looked at the data, there are clearly things that need to be improved in terms of the data that our providers are providing. And I think most administrators now are at the end of their connection journey or coming towards the end of their connection journey. What they need to focus on now is the quality of their connection, but not looking at it from their perspective, looking at it from the perspective of the members of their pension schemes. So just to give you an indication of some of the things that I found, I went in and I had a look at one of my defined contribution pensions. I'm pleased to say it wasn't a small pot, but it had a small pot marker. So there's a point there, isn't it, about having controls as an administrator to make sure that you don't, put a small pot marker on something that is not a small pot. There was another defined contribution pension, and it clearly changed administrator. So actually the dates of the pensionable service were not my dates. They were the dates of the change of administrator.
Transfer, yeah.
Yeah, the dates of the transfer. Again, I would spot that, but if somebody's looking at their pensions in chronological order, that probably wouldn't be very helpful to them. So again, it's that perspective from the saver. And it was points like that that I actually think were really helpful for me. And what industry needs to do now is to work out how we share those learnings, because we're all learning as we go along, and that's the whole purpose of live testing, and why personally I think it's an excellent thing to do. And so at PASA we'll be working with both Chris and yourself, Lucy, to talk about how we can take those learnings that are coming from the live testing and share them with industry in a way that helps all of us improve the quality of our connections.
Chris, your experience?
Yeah, so my experience has been a little bit different, because I think my pension arrangements are relatively simple with what we've been looking at. But as you can expect, the first time I'd logged on to a pensions dashboard, it was quite a surreal experience, having worked on them for so long, to actually see everything come together and see it all there was, well, I thought it was exciting. I don't think
it was
many other people
exciting.
did,
I
thought it was really exciting to see it there. And what I really liked, actually, what I enjoyed from looking at it is actually, I think the Money Helper dashboard as it goes through is really clear. There's a lot of clarity there. It's that there are things that need to be improved clearly, and I think especially some of the things about onward journey. So if you have pensions which aren't, which people can't confirm are yours, where, for example, it might only be a partial match, or whether the values aren't yet there and you need to do more, or there's more action needed. I think we need to make sure that we can help people through that. But also the speed at which it operates is actually pretty impressive. It doesn't take too long to go through from start to finish. When they're actually searching for pensions, when you think there's nearly 3,000 providers out there that are searching their records for you and then sending the information back, generally it takes around a minute or less to do that. That's quite good. And so I think I really enjoyed the whole experience.
And that's a huge improvement from the waiting 2 months when you request a statement on demand.
Yes.
So that's really helpful to hear your insights as, personal testers. But Geraldine, you're obviously involved as an administrator as well. So what are the benefits from an administrator point of view in being involved in user testing?
There are a lot of benefits. As I said previously, we are learning a lot. So most administrators will have defined some of their processes, so their possible match processes, their value data request processes. It gives us a great opportunity to test those. And I'm sure people, at different administrators are at different stages on their automation journey for those processes. But even if it's manual, it still gives you the opportunity to do that. And I think the other thing we're seeing is, as we have now got a longer testing period, we're doing our value data refreshes. So administrators who are using stored values will have to be uprating those now for the first time in some instances. So again, it's another opportunity to test a process that we will need to use at scale once the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard is launched. it's giving us feedback on the quality, back to the quality of our connection, but it is giving us feedback on the quality of our connection. And, you know, we say to trustees, this is brand new. Nobody is going to get it 100% right first time. So we really do need to take those learnings. So that's incredibly helpful. And just recently, we're now starting to get some queries coming through. First one we had, interestingly, was Chris's point about recency of data. But they're just starting to trickle through now, and that will help us in terms of building our operating model for the future, understanding the types of queries we have. It's too early, I think, to know about volumes, and that's going to be a very important thing. But you know, as testing ramps up, we will start to get an indication of what does this mean in terms of volumes, and therefore, you know, how many extra people will we need to recruit? What's the best way to meet that? Should we be on a digital journey, and those kinds of things that will feed into operating models.
So if I can summarise quickly, it sounds like it's a really good window of opportunity, really, to sort of learn from real testing with real people, but volumes are quite low, so the risk is contained and there's time to react to it. So as trustees, it's important that you get regular updates from your administrators, AVC providers and dashboard connection providers on the progress you're making in implementing the dashboard's connection and meeting your data duties. And it's really important to work with them to resolve any issues you come across during this testing phase, because as Geraldine says, you know, things are going to go wrong, especially in this early stage. Chris, I'm going to come back to you. October is the connection deadline, but what happens next?
So quite a lot will happen after October. I mean, I think it's something we've been saying for a while, that the kind of connection is the start of the journey. It's not the end of the journey, and it's really important that once schemes are connected, they don't think that's the job done. I think the world post dashboards will look very different to the world pre dashboards. I think to get ready for dashboards, the industry has done an awful lot of work over the past few years in making sure that they are ready, and I think it's fair to say standards within the industry have improved significantly as a consequence of dashboards being delivered. So I think that in itself is a real achievement, and the industry should be, I think, should be very proud of the efforts they made in dealing with that. But obviously, I think the thing that everybody wants to know about will be, when will the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard launch after that connection deadline? Once schemes are connected, I think they want to know when they're going to see their members and when their members will be able to access the Money Helper dashboard. And as we've just been talking about, quite a lot is still to be determined in terms of testing. So before we can give a very specific launch date, we really need to know a lot more about how people are using the Money Helper Pensions dashboard. Are they having a positive experience? We're doing it, and we need more testing at scale in order to be able to determine that. But as well as kind of knowing what's happening with the members, we also need to know that the system is secure, that it's stable, and that it's working well, and that we're getting the right volumes as well, and we have the right coverage across the whole of the pensions landscape, in order to make sure that people can see their pensions when they go onto the pensions dashboard. So all of those things we'll continue to monitor and to report on. But we are very confident that there will be a launch date for the Money Helper Pensions Dashboard at some point in the next financial year. So that's between April 2027 and March 2028. We will be giving a further update around the time of that connection deadline of the 31st of October, when we know more information about who's connected and who hasn't, and how that connection process has gone, and a little bit more information about how testing has gone, to understand where we are with that. And then at that stage, we'll be able, hopefully, to give a bit more information about when we expect that launch to be. But whatever happens with the launch, we do know, and we are still absolutely committed to there being a minimum 6-month notice period coming from the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, so industry can get ready. And that brings me on to the second point as well, which is, this isn't just the launch of the Money Helper dashboard from the Money and Pension Service. It's also a launch for the industry, and industry has to be as ready as MAPS will be for the launch in doing that. So everything that Geraldine's just been talking about, in making sure that systems are being tested, that you understand what you need to do if there's a partial match, to know how many people might be asking you questions, getting those data, the call centres and everything ready. It's really important that work is starting on that now, and that's ready in advance. And we will need to know that that is underway and how well that's progressing, I think, before we want to give the go-ahead for the launch, because it's really important. Again, I talked about dashboards, this being the start of the journey. It's the same for members. the first time they go on a dashboard, that's not the only thing they're ever going to do. That's the start of them finding out about their pensions and what's going to happen throughout the rest of their working life and into retirement. So we need to make sure that everything about that journey is ready for them when we start.
And of course, we're going to, together, MAPS and TPR, we're going to come and talk to the industry about how they're getting ready and provide some support. So thank you very much. We've heard about what's happening at the Money and Pensions Service. But Geraldine, from a scheme perspective, what should schemes be doing now?
It's interesting because trustees say to me, Geraldine, what should we be doing between now and the launch, because we're connected? And I
Job done.
We wish.
Yes.
And there are a number of things. I mean, operational readiness we've talked about, but we've talked about the processes and the procedures, but a really key thing is going to be recruitment. We are going to need quite a lot more people to deal with what we're expecting to be quite a large uptick in queries and inquiries from members. And I think a really important thing to remember is we hope we'll be engaging the disengaged. It's one of the objectives of Dashboard. It's so important. But sometimes the disengaged can also be the vulnerable. And I think you said, Chris, we need to look at things differently. And so, it isn't just about being operationally ready. It's about being operationally ready in the right way to perhaps deal with populations that we've not dealt with for quite some time, or who won't feel confident when they approach us. So I think trustees should be asking their administrator, not just have you got enough people in place, but have you got the right people in place? Can you provide the right service? So there is a big piece around recruitment training and being operationally ready, as well as the sort of what I'd call the harder aspects of the preparation, the processes, the procedures, the systems. So for me, that's a really key part of what administrators and providers should be doing now. Another big area is reporting. So we know reporting is one of the last things in the programme that we've come to. We've been looking at PASA at reporting. We've obviously focused initially on the compliance reporting, but a lot of that is done through the ecosystem. But again, administrators need to think, well, it might be done through the ecosystem, but what will our trustees want to know? And I think they'll want to know exactly what the regulator knows. And so I think administrators should be working on that basis, really. At PASA, we've been working with TPR about post-use behaviours, and that's the reporting that will tell us, are dashboards really meeting their stated objectives? Are we re-engaging with the disengaged? Are people finding lost pensions? And what's happening with small pots and small pensions? And that guidance will be published imminently, but we did reference it on the webinar. But then the part that we haven't really talked much in industry about is the management information that we will need as administrators to make sure that we're well placed to deal with that increase in queries when it comes. And administrators, we typically, we report to trustees once a quarter, and it's all very nice, and they get an administration report and off we go. But that's not going to work, I don't think, in a post-launch world. We're going to need to provide more information more regularly. And key to that will be being open with trustees about the assumptions that we've made. How many queries did we assume we were going to get versus how many queries have we actually got? So I think thinking through that reporting and work management piece in this intervening period is going to be absolutely critical to success. Obviously live testing, but we've talked quite a lot about that. So, but that's going to be a key focus, I think, for many administrators over that intervening period. And then the last thing is trustee engagement with their administrator and understanding any contractual changes that are needed. And some of those will be obviously commercial changes, but they're also about work prioritisation and what does the service look like, when are they going to get the reports. So, there is, I think that illustrates there is still a lot to do between now and when the launch actually happens. Irrespective of Chris's announcement of when the launch is going to be, we should just be making progress with all of these things now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're definitely moving from this phase. We were very focused on connection, and now we're thinking about what happens beyond connection. I mean, Chris, you've mentioned operational readiness. So getting ready for when dashboards launch. Geraldine, you touched on that as well, but also monitoring compliance and reporting. I think it brings us back to this need to think, for schemes to think about what is next and what is beyond the deadline and what is beyond launch. And obviously, to help you do this, we at the Regulator, we provide checklists. And actually, recently, we split our checklists into two, a pre and a post-connection checklist, so people can keep track of their duties wherever they are in the journey, because we are moving forward. So it's all systems go. What else should schemes be preparing for? Geraldine, I'll come to you first.
So I thought I'd just share some of what we're being asked, and one of the key areas that we're getting questions about is communications. So, it's quite hard when we don't know what communications are going to come with the launch, but trustees want to, or are starting to think about preparing their members for a dashboard world. And administrators are doing the same. A key aspect of a dashboard is really to encourage the member to go on and find out more. So actually that communication journey, how they get from the dashboard perhaps onto a scheme portal, and what the trustees then tell them when they access their scheme portal, that end-to-end saver journey is something that really everybody should be starting to think about now, because systems take time to build, don't they? So that's a very key part of what we're seeing trustees engaging with at the moment. I think the other thing is it's time almost to pause a little bit and step back. And I'm going to use some very administrative words. I'm going to say it's time to do a compliance audit. Step back, look at what you've built, make sure it complies with the regulations and the standards, and that actually it's going to be delivering the right service going forward.
And again, take action where you identify issues. This is the opportunity to sort of improve.
Take the time.
Chris, anything else you want to add on good member experience?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. So firstly, I'm really glad you mentioned the communications and what communications there might be around the launch, because clearly that's an area we're still working on. There wouldn't be any point in doing lots of communications now without being able to tell people when it's going to launch. But it's something that we know is going to be really important, and it's also something that we are going to want to work very closely with the industry with as well, because we know the best way to reach members is through the schemes in dealing with that. So that's something that is a work in progress, and we will continue to work with that, work with industry and our delivery partners on that to make sure that we get the right people involved and get the right message across in hopefully a consistent and coherent way to members, to help them when we do get that launch, to make sure the launch goes as well as it can do. I think on top of that, a message for thinking about for administrators and for schemes is also to be prepared. One thing we know from experience is that dashboards never stay the same. They continually iterate. If you look at international experience, they are continually changing. I think some of them are on their 8th, 9th or 10th iteration in 20 years or so. So they do update as technology changes, as data changes, as the system changes. You can even see things that are going through the Pension Schemes Act that may end up on dashboards around value for money, and member expectations will change as well. So all these things, and we're also putting in place the provisions for private sector dashboards as well. So when they come on stream some point after the Money Helper dashboard, again, that might change some of the dynamics in the industry as well. So it's really important that, again, as we've said already, you don't look at I'm connected, that's it, the journey's done. It's like the world will continually be different and evolving once we get past that Money Helper Pensions dashboard launch, and it will then continue to change after that.
And I think something you mentioned in passing, so earlier, obviously you shared the experience, the insights to date. I know you did a webinar where you shared that, but that's going to be ongoing during this phase as well, is going to be helping industry prepare by sharing all these messages. I mean, I think what's really struck me all the time I've been on dashboards is the sheer commitment there has been in industry to making this happen. And it's bearing fruit, as you say, the excitement of using it. You'll keep industry up to date on user testing and insights and the launch. And PASA, obviously, you continue to provide support to administrator. You mentioned recently compliance monitoring guidance, but also monitoring sort of post-use behaviours. Obviously, at TPR, we'll also continue to support you in preparing for dashboards. So in April 2026, we updated our guidance. We updated it to reflect where we are in the delivery of the programme, in light of frequently asked questions, and also in light of best practice that we found by talking from industry. And as I mentioned earlier, we also split our checklist into a pre- and post-connection checklist, so you can keep track of where you are in your duties, wherever you are in the journey. In April, we also published a report into engagement we had with the largest 51 schemes in the country. Between them, they cover 80% of all occupational pension scheme memberships. And it really showed that a lot of work was happening on data, getting it ready for dashboards, but there is still work to do. And I want to highlight 2 points in particular. The first is around ensuring that value data is accurate. So not just looking at the personal data you're using to find members in your records, but also looking at the data that you're going to be sending them on the value of their pensions and making sure that's accurate. And that means testing your calculations and being confident in the accuracy of the inputs into those calculations. The other point I want to make is around the importance of embedding this kind of enhanced focus on data that we've had because of pensions dashboards into your business as usual. Data is a strategic asset and trustees should treat it as such. Ongoing, good, high-quality data will help you meet your ongoing dashboard duties, but also help you reap the benefits of automation, harness the opportunities that might be posed by artificial intelligence, or prepare for your strategies such as de-risking. So embedding all this good work on data into BAU is going to be important. I would encourage you to read that report regardless of your size, because there might be some practical insights and tips on what you could be doing, and it also reiterates our expectations. Going forward, as I've mentioned, we're going to be thinking about operational readiness. So we're going to be talking alongside with MAPS to the largest schemes administrators and wider industry about how they're preparing. But we'll also be thinking about what support we can provide to you in terms of how you communicate to your members on dashboards. And that includes, coming back to a point Geraldine made about vulnerable members, it includes making sure that there are robust protections around, for example, around scams. I know a lot of you might be interested in knowing what happens on the 1st of November 2026 to those schemes that have not connected by the deadline. So I will say you can expect to hear from us. We will be interested in understanding the decision making, the steps you have taken to seek to comply with your duty, and any risk assessment you have made of not connecting. So it's really important that you keep a robust audit trail of that. As for duties around finding members and sending back values, as we can appreciate, and Geraldine made the point, there will be mistakes. It's not always possible to meet all the legal requirements, but what's really key is that you identify these issues and you take prompt and effective action to resolve them. And again, I'd highlight the importance of keeping an audit trail of the steps you're taking to address issues, including any engagement you've done with your third parties. We'll be getting data from the Central Digital Architecture and from schemes through MAPS's reporting standards. And we will use that data to identify areas of risks where we may want to intervene. We will intervene only to the extent necessary to address the harm, and we're going to be focusing on where we think there's the greatest risk of members not seeing a complete and accurate picture of their pensions. You can expect throughout that we're going to be pragmatic and proportionate. Well, I think that's enough for now. We're going to take a 2-minute break and we'll come back to your questions. If you haven't already had a chance, please submit them to us. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin the Q&A session, we'd like to ask you 2 polling questions, one now and one at the end of the session. Our first question is, what is your biggest dashboards challenge right now? You should see the following options on your screen: connecting by the October deadline, improving your matching data, improving your value data, understanding your post-connection duties, operational readiness for launch, and wider member communications and engagement. While we're waiting for the results, I think it's really interesting to see the range of challenges represented there, from the very practical, such as connection, to sort of ongoing readiness and making sure members get the right service. I think it really reminds us that schemes are on different stages of the journey. Thank you for taking part in the survey. It's really useful to understand where your priorities and concerns lie. I'm just waiting for the results to come through. And well, unsurprisingly, operational readiness and what that means and how we communicate to members comes out very strongly, as is an ongoing focus on data. I mean, I'm not really surprised that connecting by deadline doesn't have more, because most people we know are well on the way to connection. Thank you again for sharing your views. We'll move on to the Q&A session, and I can see that we've received a question from Majid, who is asking about what happens when you don't connect because of buyout or wind up. If you are in scope of the regulations, you don't fall out of scope unless you've reached no members effectively. So either everyone's transferred out, everyone's retired, or everyone's secured a personal policy from buyout. when you don't connect by the deadline, it's important to fill in a breach of law report. You can find out more about that in our code of practice. It's really important that you keep a record of the decision that you've made, why you've made the decision, and the risk assessment you've made of the decision not to connect. We'll be looking at all of those as evidence so we can understand what's the best steps for us to take from them. The duration of the delay will be important. I'm going to take now a question for Chris. Obviously, a lot of interest in dashboards being launched and what will launch look like. So it's a question from Hannah of how are pensions dashboards going to be launched to the general public, and how can pension schemes prepare for an increase in inquiries post-launch? I will add to that the question everyone has, which is, do you know when the dashboard's available point will be announced?
Yeah, so as you'd expect, get asked this question quite a lot. And going back to some of the things we were discussing earlier, there are definitely some things we can say about when dashboards are going to be available. So we are expecting the Money Helper dashboard to be launched at some point between April next year, 2027, and March 2028. And we will ensure that there is a minimum of 6 months notice given by the Secretary of State before that happens. So industry will be able to be prepared in order for that time for when it happens. But there's also, I think, as we've been talking about already, a lot that we need to find out before we can really pin down exactly when that is going to be. And so we need to go through the user testing and get those insights, and importantly, share those insights with industry as well, to make sure that industry is aware of what they can expect. So there's definitely plenty that schemes can be doing at the moment in order to get ready. And I think really we will do as much as we can to share information, to give as much insight from the work that we're doing to help people understand, or to help schemes understand what it's likely to look like when they get to that point. But really, there still is a lot of work that we need to do before we can be very specific about exactly when it's going to launch and exactly what it's going to look like. As we said, we want to make sure that we know when it's going to launch before we start to warm up the public, but we definitely want to involve the industry in that. So we will be sharing plans over the coming months, so that by the time we get into that communications campaign, we'll be working very closely with our delivery partners in TPR and FCA and DWP, but also with the industry as well, to make sure we're reaching people in the right way.
And I think if you want to keep track of these insights, a good way to do is to sign up to the Money and Pension Service newsletter, where insights are shared, but obviously we will play our role in sharing them as well. And I'd reiterate the importance of sort of making sure where you identify issues, dealing with them during this testing period. I'm going to then ask a question raised by John. Could we get a detailed update of where we should be, what we are meant to have completed at this point, and what we need to provide? So I am obviously going to refer you to our guidance, where we set out your duties in both what you need to do to get ready to connect, but also what you need to do to meet your post-connection duties. And there's a handy checklist there that helps you stay on track, whether you're in the run-up to connecting or whether you have actually already connected and you want to get ready. And I think some schemes have used it in their trustee meetings and found it very helpful. Andrew is asking whether post-connection duties need to be formally recorded. I'll come to you, Geraldine, in a moment, but it's worth noting that there is a number of record-keeping duties associated with dashboards. For example, you have to keep a record of your matching policies. There are some data that you need to provide to the Money and Pension Service through the reporting standards. There's additional records you need to keep around the use of values not available codes, so if you're unable to provide a value immediately. And also, so you need to keep records around the contacts you receive around dashboards. All of that is in our guidance, so you can find out more. But Geraldine, what should trustees be interested in as well, and what should administrators be looking at on top of the legal requirements?
Well, I think the legal requirements are a really good place to start.
Yes.
And trustees, I think, should be starting to expect to see some sort of reporting from their administrators once they have connected. So if you start with the very sort of simplest things, uptime is the statistic that we have to report under the reporting standards. So once the scheme is connected, it's not unreasonable, I think, for trustees to ask, have they met their uptime reports? But as live testing is testing the dashboard, we should use this period to test other aspects of our dashboard solutions, including reporting. But I think trustees should be asking administrators now, what are your plans between now and the launch? How should we be monitoring that we will be ready for that launch when it takes place?
Okay, thank you. To a very different topic around member protections, I'm going to go to Chris. How are you going to prevent scams and abuse?
It's a really, really important area. And of course, it's one that's already very prevalent in the pensions industry. And so one we're already, I think, aware of and on guard to. But undoubtedly, when people have more pensions information together all in one place, it will probably make them a larger target than it does at the moment. But alongside all the existing work that's going on across the industry and with all the different partners involved in preventing scams, we are very aware that we have to be very careful. And so there are warnings which will be throughout the Money Helper dashboard that are already there when you have a look and you do the testing and go through it to try and help people understand that having this data is going to be important for them, but it is important data and they need to be very careful how they use it. When there is going to be an export function as well from the Money Helper dashboard, so people can take that information away and use it. The warnings will also be part of that as well. So they won't be able to download the data without downloading the warnings as well. So hopefully every time they're looking at that information, they can see a warning about what's going to be there and what's going to help them there. So we need to help people be able to help themselves in the same way as we are now. It's something that we will continue to keep an eye on. And it's also something that hopefully we'll pick up, again, more insight on as we go through user testing, as we come to understand what people are going to be using the dashboard for and what they understand from the numbers that they're seeing. That will help us make sure that they're getting the right information and know what they can do with the information they get, but equally what they shouldn't be doing with that information as well.
And I'd reiterate, obviously, I'd add to that, the regulator also chairs the Pension Scams Action Group, so we are working very closely with MAPS, making sure that the stop, think, fraud language is reflected throughout, but also how we can support schemes in communicating about scams to their members. So very much on our radar. On a related issue, what preparations do we recommend on potential cybersecurity breaches? So Chris, can you just tell us a little bit about how cybersecurity works for the digital architecture, and I'll talk about schemes.
Absolutely. I mean, again, a really, really important area and one that we've been aware of ever since we started working in the pensions dashboard space, and in particular around the central digital architecture. It's so important that we actually have been designed the whole architecture to minimise the risk of a cybersecurity incident. It doesn't mean it's not possible. Nothing, I think, can be 100% certain. But we design it so data only resides where it currently resides. So it's not stored centrally anywhere. It's still held with administrators and schemes themselves, which is really important. When it's viewed, it can be viewed on a dashboard by a member, but they have to get through their own security with a digital identity verification to be able to see it. And then as soon as they stop looking on a dashboard, that data no longer persists. So it doesn't stay on the dashboard either. So we're trying to minimise the points of access that cyber criminals could have as part of that. But also there's really important cybersecurity credentials which every organisation that has access to the infrastructure needs to show as well. So we have significant health checks, IT health checks that each provider has to go through if they're connecting to the infrastructure. We have penetration testing that we go through. We are also going to be conducting our own kind of cybersecurity testing, war games, if you like, to see what happens if we can simulate an attack and see what happens. So it's something we take really seriously. Again, it's something that's already prevalent.
Yes.
So we have to be very wary of. And so we would encourage everybody to be really on their guard and to really stay in touch with the National Cybersecurity Centre as well, because we use their standards in order to make sure that we're as safe as we can be.
And again, it really emphasises trustees and scheme managers are responsible for the security of their assets and their data. I would direct you to our guidance. We have a guide on cybersecurity principles, which includes some of the links to the National Cybersecurity Centre. And dashboards is kind of raising the stakes, as are some of the more modern frontier AI models, which are offering challenges in cybersecurity. So there's never been a time that's more important to be on top of your cybersecurity. Read our guidance and make sure you're prepared, minimising the risks, but also prepared for when things go wrong, because with cyber, it's a question of when, not if, unfortunately. I'm going to move on to Geraldine. How easily can a scheme that is already connected to the dashboard transfer their connection to another scheme administrator in the event of a change in provider?
So this is new territory.
Okay.
But it's territory that we're starting to go into now, and we are starting to see the first connected schemes moving between administrators. One of the first questions to ask is it the same ISP? Because the process is slightly different.
The same connection provider.
Same connection provider, yeah. So the process is slightly different depending on whether it is the same or different. But there are a lot of things to think about, and it's one of the areas that PASA's working on currently with maps, and we will be producing some guidance on this probably in the autumn, so just after the summer break. But you know, it involves things like also engaging with the AVC provider, thinking about the value data, and having, you know, one of the things we said previously was we have to think differently. And actually, you've got to be value data ready. You've got to have assessed your data. You know, doing things after go live is not an option, perhaps in the way that it might have been in the past.
Note, there's no kind of blackout period if you can't sort of
exactly.
So it is a new way of doing things, and we look forward to the guidance on
differently.
that. Chris, how can administrators register as users prior to the DAP to see dashboards from a user's perspective?
So again, really important that the administrators and schemes can see how their data is being displayed and what their members will see when dashboards are there. So there's a couple of things you can do. So one of the things is, as part of PDP at the Money and Pension Service, we've produced some videos which give it like as live demonstration of the dashboard, so you can see what it looks like, see how the numbers will be presented, see the kind of warnings that people will see, all of those kind of things, and we can make those accessible if people get in touch with us on the dashboards program for people to look at that they are for industry professionals rather than the public. As I mentioned, we don't want the public to get too excited quite yet, but we will do soon. But those are really helpful for administrators to be able to get a general idea of how it will look. But also just generally testing, as we've talked about already, is really important. And we're always willing for schemes that want to test with us and want to register as users for that testing as well to come through. So there are details on the Pensions Dashboards Programme website about how you can register as an industry tester, or you can register friends, families, colleagues, just to be part of the research panel to do the user testing, but also how you can have your scheme registered. So your scheme can do part of that testing, and as part of that, as an administrator, if you want to register as that, you can take part in that testing as well. So we're very keen to hear from administrators in that space as well, and that's an area we want to work with to make sure that that schemes can almost kind of self-test as well, to make sure that the data that's coming through is actually the data that should be there. So I think there's a joint purpose there, which we'll be looking at very closely.
We now have a question from Victoria. Do we know what's going to happen post-launch to the public? So what are people going to be doing once these dashboards? Do you know anything about that yet?
So we don't know too much about that yet. So I think I mean, really importantly, as I said, we've been doing quite a lot of testing. The first part of testing is really about the system, making sure that it's stable and working and secure. The second part of testing, which we're probably about to be moving into, is much more about what are people feeling, what are they seeing, how are they responding, how are they reacting. But alongside the work we're doing there in direct user testing is we've also going to be doing some consumer research, some social research coming up with 3,000 individuals or so, where we're going to be looking not just at what they do or how they get through the dashboard experience and surveying them after that to find out what they say they might do afterwards, but then also going back to them 2 to 3 months later and interviewing them again to find out what they have done. So it's not just what they say they're going to do, it's what actual experience they have had. And that will tell us a lot more, I think, about what's likely to happen once dashboards go live. We'll then start to understand what consumer behaviour is going to be. We'll find out. We're not quite sure whether lots of people will decide to take lots of actions, whether lots of people will say they're going to take lots of actions but never quite get around to doing it, or whether actually people will just be interested in seeing what's there and wait to come back later and then think about it again. So we'll find out a lot more as we go through the rest of this year.
Okay, thank you. I now have a question from Michael. In the instance where the main benefit comes from the main scheme, but the AVCs come from another provider, are there any practical steps to ensure that AVC providers deliver the right data on time? I'll come to you for practical steps, Geraldine, as an administrator. But I think I'd reiterate that it's really important to work with the AVC provider from the outset. You know, as trustees, they are accountable in making sure the AVC provider does it right. One practical thing we've seen is making sure that the data was reconciled between the main administrator and the AVC provider. So it's the same matching experience. So if you match with one, you match with the other, because otherwise that could be confusing. So that's one thing. And most people are doing that annually going forward. Geraldine, is there anything you would add as an administrator working with AVC providers? What do you find has helped?
What do we find has helped? Building the relationship with them has been really important, because we're not just relying on the point of connection. To your point, we need to rely on them every year to give us the data that we need if the trustees are connecting the data through the main administrator. But even where the AVCs are being connected by the AVC provider themselves, that annual reconciliation process is very, very important. So, planning is key, communication is key, working together, very, very important. So there are some real practical steps as well on the PASA website, in the toolkit content that's on there already to help with connecting AVCs and keeping them up to date.
It was one of the first toolkits you did.
It was one of the first toolkits that we did, yeah.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Damien. Is guidance being considered for trustees on how best to manage queries regarding non-matching pension benefits between dashboards and scheme-specific member portals, which is typically in real time? So effectively, if they log on to dashboards, they might see a value from within last year. If they log on to the member portal, they might see something more recent. Is this something you've come across, Geraldine, and how is it being handled?
It definitely is something that we've come across. It's a real concern, I think, in the industry about how we manage this. And it is about trying to preempt the types of questions that we're going to get and making the answers to those questions easily accessible. So it's almost like pre-thinking what members are going to ask. What we're seeing is frequently asked questions being used quite extensively, potentially. So put as well a login on the website, because once someone's logged into a website, they're kind of engaged, aren't they? And they can probably find the answers. So frequently asked questions that are easy to access on a website seems to be a good way that people are addressing it.
Yes, it's almost, why is this value different to dashboards?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Does TPR expect funds, sorry, a question is from Heidi. Does TPR expect funds to undertake address tracing on every active and deferred member? If so, when would be the best time to undertake this, given that we don't yet know when dashboards will go live to the public? So a lot of schemes have been preemptively looking at this and looking at tracing in particular of deferred. I think it partly depends on what you're doing for matching. So not everyone is using address as a point of matching data. They're using national insurance number, surname, date of birth. If you're using postcode, then absolutely you should be looking at tracing. It's worth knowing that tracing isn't just about dashboards and getting that data ready. In particular, tracing members that are coming up to retirement is important. So I think you need to look at your tracing strategy in the round and holistically what do you need for the scheme. You may not need it for dashboards, but you may need it elsewhere. As for when the best time to do it, well, what do they say? The best time is yesterday and the next best is today. So absolutely. But again, a lot of schemes are looking at it more as we look at the ones that are coming up to retirement, and that's who we prioritise. I have a question from Naomi around whether small schemes are exempt. I'm gonna test. Do you know the answer?
I hope so.
Yes. So if you had fewer than 100 active and deferred member at what's called the reference date in legislation, then you are exempt. So, for example, small self-administered schemes, executive pensions plans, all those schemes are exempt of dashboards. Now, they are able to connect on a voluntary basis, and MAPS, you're working on a process for them to be able to do that. So if you want to be on dashboards, you can be on dashboards. It's worth noting that if at that very precise date you had more than 100 members, you don't fall out of scope unless you have no more active and deferred members. So everyone's been bought out, everyone's retired, everyone's transferred out, you are still in scope. And that does, we have seen that happen in practice with people who had 100, now have fewer, but they are still in scope. A question for myself from Carl. Could you share some insight into the TPR survey results regarding value data preparation for dashboards sent out to schemes recently? So this refers to a regulatory initiative we're undertaking at the moment. We've reached out to a sample of DB and hybrid schemes to understand how they're preparing their data, and particularly their value data. We reached out to a sample of 240. I can't share insights yet because we've only just gathered the information and we're in the process of analysing it, but we will absolutely publish a report and insights on that. What we can say from other engagement, including the deep dive and wide industry engagement communications with administrators, is that there is some focus on value data. It's typically lagging behind matching data. Most schemes are planning to revalue most of the benefits annually, but there will often be a small pocket of schemes that are particularly complex, pension sharing on divorce and such, that will be calculated on demand. That's pretty standard. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question that Vivian has sent in about communication plans. Schemes need good awareness of the existence of dashboards for them to be a success, and I guess schemes and members need good awareness.
Yeah, and that's I mean, that's very, very true, and something we're very aware of. I think we've already alluded to the fact that we don't want to get too much too soon out to the public, because the first thing, if you get everyone excited about pensions dashboards and how good they're going to be, the first question they're going to ask is, so when can I use it? And until we can tell them that, we really don't want to get them too excited about it. But we do need to work with schemes and with all our other partners as well in order to get that message out there and across. So you can keep in touch with us. As you've already mentioned, the newsletter that we have on our website, that's the best way to stay in touch with what's generally happening on the Pensions Dashboards programme and with the Money Helper dashboard, so we can get that information across there. And of course, with the Regulator channels, you've got lots of contacts as well and information that goes out that way. And other industry groups such as PASA, there's really good ways to stay in touch with everything that's going on in there. We are working on an external communications plan, which will involve the industry when we are more certain about what's going to happen with the Money Helper dashboard, and then we can work out the best way to launch it that's going to get the best outcome for the members and also the best outcome for the industry in doing that at the same time. What's really important, I think, is that the launch could vary by a few months either way, depending on what happens in testing. But the dashboards generally should be around for decades, and it's really important to get it right so that they last and they do have that lasting impact and are a real benefit to everyone who's using them. It'd be a real shame for the launch to not be as good as it could be because we've rushed it, so we need to make sure that we do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're going to be working together to provide schemes with some tools in practice about how they communicate with members. In the meantime, if you do have questions, if your members are already asking questions, I know, Pasi, you had a guide on what to say to members now, and I believe you're going to be updating that guide. Is that right?
In the process of being refreshed at the moment, yeah.
So if you go to Pasi's website, they do have a guide of what you can say to members now, and they'll be updating it. I have a question from Alistair around whether there's an opportunity for pensions dashboards to help the small pots problem, and if so, what might that be? So I will ask Chris to come in on this, because obviously the PPI, who you are also the president of, does the research into small pots. I think members will be able to see their pots. They'll be able to see where they've got small pots, and they may then take an action to consolidate them. But that relies on members taking action. We don't know yet from user research where they're going to be. Small pots is a much bigger structural issue. With automatic enrolment, people are getting a different pot when they have different jobs. They're changing jobs more often. So there is kind of a bit of a structural issue about them being created. So that's why we need the legislative framework that's coming from small pots to have something at the scheme level to consolidate these, so you're not relying on member action when actually we've got a whole system built on inertia. Is there anything else you'd add on small pots? Yeah,
no, I mean, it's an obvious question and a good question, and it's quite often thought that we could just use dashboards and the infrastructure, the digital architecture that we built to transfer smaller pots into a larger pot. But dashboards and the infrastructure, it's not transactional. It's only information.
By design.
By design at the moment. It's really important that it's only information that flows around from one to the other. That doesn't mean we can't take any learnings away. And in fact, a lot of the work that we've been doing around data standards and getting the industry to have much better quality data will be a really important precursor to anything that happens on small pots. So I think there's definitely overlaps in terms of the types of data that's going to be valuable and useful for that. But at the moment, the infrastructure just won't be able to cope with anything that involves transfers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Question from Tom. I'm going to ask for a quick answer now because we're nearing the end of the webinar. So what has been the most important learning in dashboards so far? I'm going to go to Geraldine first.
There's been so many, Lucy. There's been so many. I want to pick on one, though, because I think it's been a real differentiator, and that's been the collaboration between the regulator, between MAPS and the industry. I honestly don't think we would have made the progress with dashboards if that collaboration hadn't existed. And I think that creates a blueprint for how we should all work together going forwards.
Chris, most important learning?
I might pick that one too. But I mean, for me, they're all important, and there's always more. I think that's the challenge. Every time you think you've come across the most important learning, there's another important learning that comes along. And I think we've still got some of the most important ones to come through the testing. So I think it's really important that we do enough of the right type of user testing to make sure that when the dashboard is launched, it's launched in the right way for the right people to use for the right things.
Yeah, I think, ongoing learnings and just being able to flex them. I mean, adding to that, we all have an idea of what dashboards should be, but we're in the industry. We are not the target audience. So actually, some of the insights coming from user testing are really interesting to me because it's not what I've thought, but that's great because I'm not the target audience. I'm going to move to the final question, which has been provided by Paul. What is the most important thing schemes should be doing right now to prepare for the launch of pensions dashboards? I'm going to go to Chris, then Geraldine.
Difficult one, because there's not just one thing I think that they should be doing. I think that what they should be doing is that they should be prepared for life being different post dashboards, not going back to how it used to be, because it's not going to go back to how it used to be. But one thing, if they need one thing to do that will really help them do that, it's to get their scheme testing. I think they'll learn so much more over the next few months through testing that will really help them be prepared for when the dashboard goes live.
Get involved in testing, or if they can't do that, at least learn from the insights from testing.
Yeah.
Geraldine.
For me, I think it's continue to focus on data is absolutely key. Matching data, value data, but also looking at the data that you're providing to the dashboard through the eyes of the saver or the member. For me, that's the most important thing because it will put a different perspective on it, and it does mean that it will give them a better experience.
And without surprise, I'm going to say use TPR's checklist, a pre and post connection checklist, to see where you are and where you should be, and use that to track the progress. So that was what I would say the most important thing you should be doing right now. So we're coming to the end of the session, but I'd like to ask one final poll question. Earlier, we asked about the challenges you're facing right now. This time, we'd like to understand what action you'll be taking away from today's discussion. So the question is, following today's session, which areas are you most likely to prioritise first? You should see the following options on your screen: getting ready for connection, reviewing and improving matching data, reviewing and improving value data, operational readiness planning, so staffing, training, contracts, testing end-to-end processes, setting up internal compliance monitoring and reporting, and member communications planning. Thank you for taking part in the survey. It's really encouraging to see where schemes are planning to focus their effort next. Every scheme's journey will be different, but these results give us a useful snapshot of where attention is turning across the industry as preparations continue, and so we can best continue to support you. Unsurprisingly, one of the highest scorers is operational readiness planning, staffing, training, contracts. So that is very much a focus for us as well, and trying to learn from the insights you have and any insights you can already have from the testing you're taking part in. Hopefully today's session has helped you identify some practical next steps and give you greater confidence in planning for dashboards readiness and beyond. We've covered a lot today. We've heard about the significant progress made across industry in preparing for pensions dashboards and how testing is helping to improve the experience for members. I think for me, a key message from today's discussion is that connection is not the end of the journey. And once connected, obviously, schemes need to be able to find members and send them accurate and up-to-date information. But also the testing period gives you a really valuable opportunity to identify issues, to strengthen your processes, and to build this readiness ahead of dashboards becoming more widely available. We also discussed the importance of working closely with those supporting you, not just administrators, but also AVC providers and your dashboard connection providers. The importance of maintaining an ongoing focus on data, including value data, not just personal data, and the need to keep good records of how you are meeting your duties. We will continue to support schemes and administrators as we move towards the launch of dashboards. We want to help you deliver, while ensuring members can access a complete and accurate picture of their pensions. I'd like to thank Chris and Geraldine today for sharing their insights, and thank all of you for joining us and submitting your questions. We hope you found today's session useful. As mentioned earlier, the reference document and useful links guide are available to download, and a recording of today's webinar will be available in a few days' time by navigating back to this page. Finally, we'd really value your feedback, so please take a moment to complete the short survey before you leave via the menu tab on the left or the QR code on screen now. Thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.